A young man is walking across a city crosswalk when he suddenly turns and sees a speeding truck rushing right toward him. He gasps in shock just before the impact. In the next moment, drops of blood fall into a dark pool. A young man lies face down in a snowy landscape, bleeding heavily. A system voice warns him that his character is in a bleeding state and requires immediate treatment. He wonders if he is dead and complains that the game company could not afford a female voice actress. He pushes himself up from the snow and recognizes the area as the northern ice fields from a virtual reality game called Palladia. He is confused because he remembers already logging out. Suddenly, his head throbs with intense pain as unfamiliar memories flood his mind. He realizes these are the memories of Alvin Arian, a mysterious tribal youth. He recognizes this name as a quest NPC from the game and realizes he has transmigrated into the game as this character. He yells out to open his system interface. A screen appears in front of him, but he notices he still cannot log out. He checks his stats on the system screen and is completely shocked. His name is listed as Alvin with incredibly high attributes, including 19 strength and 18 constitution. He notes that most tier 1 characters only average around 12 points. He wonders what kind of pay-to-win character setup this is. He then checks his core attribute, which is called Reshaping the World. The system screen explains this is an incompletely released special talent that allows him to modify rules by consuming his own energy. Alvin realizes he has become the Star-Forging Titan, a final boss from a later game update. He looks at his hands and says he will not listen to fate. He wants to survive and rewrite his destiny. He remembers the game has several major events coming up, including wars with orcs and skeleton armies. He knows he must get stronger to survive these near-death experiences. He notes that it is mid-December and a severe winter storm called the White Tide is approaching. He decides he must survive the winter first to confirm the game's timeline and look for clues about bloodline purification. He states that this purification is the key to becoming a strong Titan. He is currently far away from his tribe and hundreds of kilometers away from the magic kingdom of Elrond. He remembers there is a hunter's cabin nearby in the woods with firewood and food. He plans to wait out the storm there and then hitch a ride with a caravan to the Central Empire. Lind is where the main storyline begins. He wants to go there to get the Alchemic Knight class, which he used in his past life to forge strong magic armor. Suddenly, he hears movement in the distance. He dives into the snow and hides. He looks over the snowdrift and sees figures approaching. He knows this is not a normal trade route, so they cannot be an ordinary caravan. A blonde woman is being chased by men in armor. The men ride black horses with blue flames and shoot crossbows at her. Alvin notices the black horses do not make any sound or show white breath in the cold air. He recognizes them as undead mounts favored by the nobles of Elrond. He then looks at the woman and recognizes her as Fredia Guthsmith, the Empress of the Magic Kingdom Elrond. Alvin watches the chase and realizes Fredia has not become the Empress yet, and is still just the eldest princess. He notes that the game's timeline is currently in the Age of Swords and Magic. Based on his experience as a veteran player, he estimates that the pursuers are no higher than tier 2 in strength. One of the pursuers asks if they should capture the princess alive, but another replies that there is no need. As a rider readies his crossbow, Alvin jumps out of the snow and grabs the front leg of the galloping undead horse. The rider is startled and yells that someone is there. Alvin complains that they interrupted his hiding plan. He pulls out a knife and attacks the rider. The man draws a blade to block and tells Alvin it is his bad luck to meet the blood race. Alvin grabs the man's wrist and punches him forcefully in the face, knocking him off the horse. The other pursuers notice the attack and yell to kill him as they fire their crossbows. Alvin grabs the stunned rider and holds him up as a human shield. The crossbow bolts pierce the man's back. The leader curses at his men for shooting their own ally. Alvin realizes that these tier 2 enemies only have attributes around 16, which is lower than his own stats. Fredia and her bird look back at the commotion. The leader tells one of his men to take care of the barbarian, and the man agrees. The uninjured rider approaches, and the man Alvin is holding says he was just careless for a moment. Alvin easily lifts the human shield and throws him directly at the approaching rider, knocking him off his horse to the ground. The rider stands up, revealing pale skin with red patches and glowing red eyes. He realizes Alvin is skilled and introduces himself as a Tier 2 embracer. He lunges at Alvin with a dagger, telling him to experience the speed of the blood race. Alvin simply raises his arm and blocks the incoming blade with his metal arm guard. Alvin realizes the blood race's rapier is dangerous and says he cannot be careless. He grabs the man's wrist, trapping the blade, and asks to see how he will draw his sword now. Alvin clenches his fist, which begins to glow with power, and declares that it is his turn. He delivers a devastating punch directly into the man's face. The impact sends the pale rider flying backward, spitting blood. The leader of the pursuers watches in shock and curses, realizing that Alvin is suppressing a Tier 2 embrace using only raw physical stats. The leader throws down a smoke bomb and escapes into the snow, using a common trick to flee from stronger opponents. Nearby, Fredia sits on top of one of the injured pursuers and repeatedly bashes his head with a heavy rock to finish him off. Alvin walks over, dusting off his hands, and announces that he has taken down his opponent. He looks at Fredia, whose face and hands are covered in blood, and awkwardly notes that things did not seem to go well for her. Fredia ignores him and rushes to her giant yellow bird, crying out its name, Flory. She hugs the dying bird's neck and gently closes its eyes, telling her partner and friend to rest in peace. After a moment, Fredia stands up and thanks Alvin for his help. She formally introduces herself as Fredia, the eldest princess of the Elrond Kingdom, and asks for the warrior's name. Alvin smiles and replies that calling him a warrior is an overstatement. He claims to just be a commoner who got lost on the icy plains. Fredia notices Alvin staring off to the side and asks what he is looking at. Alvin casually replies that he is just considering the issue of looting. He walks over to one of the defeated pursuers lying in the snow. Alvin holds his dagger over the man and pries valuable items off him, happily stating that it is all money while the bloody man screams in pain. Fredia watches this and asks again for his name and where he is from. Alvin stands up straight and introduces himself as Alvin Arian, a northerner. Fredia is surprised and asks if he is the blessed first son. Alvin is slightly shocked that she knows this title. She explains that she read about the tribes in the Royal Library's collection of Northern Geography. Alvin then asks what she plans to do next since she is being hunted. He mentions that the people chasing her are annoying, and he is just a passerby. Fredia points out that he does not act like a simple passerby. She tells him she must head to the border because the capital is no longer safe. Looking back at the dead horses and bodies in the snow, she explains that she left with only a few guards in order to avoid the real trap. Alvin thinks about the history of Elrond, known as the Magic Kingdom. It is the birthplace of magic, and its ruler is often called the Demon King. The nobles in the inner ring treat commoners like cattle. The kingdom constantly needs resources from the north, and commoners often become hunters to survive the magic users. The kingdom also houses necromancers who demand bodies and souls. Alvin realizes the nobles want to replace the Demon King and have been causing chaos since the old king died 10 years ago. He knows the pursuers they just killed are not the only ones. Alvin asks Fredia why she thinks the border is safe when the capital is not. Fredia explains that only the army at the border remains loyal to the royal family. She plans to head to the northern fortress because it is the closest military base. Alvin thinks to himself that a military base will definitely have a teleportation array he can use. He agrees to go with her, but states they must deal with the dead bodies first to stop the blood race from tracking them. He walks over to one of the dead pursuers and pulls off the man's heavy brown cloak. He puts the cloak on and says he will use it to mask his scent. Fredia is shocked and warns him that wearing their clothes will leave a permanent scent on him. Alvin casually kicks the dead body and says the smell will disperse eventually. Fredia tries to argue, but Alvin suddenly looks down and yells for her to stay back. The dead body he just kicked opens its eyes, which now glow with a bright white light. The corpse groans for blood and suddenly sits up, grabbing Alvin's arm. Fredia looks on in terror and realizes the dead embracier has been turned into a blood slave. She states that someone nearby must be controlling the corpses. A pale hand is shown snapping its fingers. As soon as the snap occurs, the blood slave grabbing Alvin begins to glow with dark purple magic. Fredia yells that it is a corpse explosion. The dead body violently explodes in a massive blast of purple energy and blood, completely engulfing Alvin. As the purple smoke from the explosion clears, a terrifying red monster made of raw flesh and exposed bones stands in the gore. The necromancer leader, now wearing a horned skull mask, stands behind his creation and laughs. He boasts that Alvin was lucky to survive the explosion, but asks how he will fare against a mutant ghoul he spent half his life creating. Alvin steps out of the thick smoke, coughing and waving his hand. He is completely unharmed, but complains that the heavy cloak he just looted is now ruined. The necromancer commands his ghoul to tear them to pieces. Alvin quickly grabs Fredia, carrying her in his arms, and sprints away across the snowy plain. The giant red ghoul lets out a roar and chases after them with incredible speed. As the monster closes the distance, Alvin looks back over his shoulder with a confident smirk. He mocks the necromancer, stating that a mere tier 4 summon is not worthy of fighting him. In response, the ghoul unleashes a rapid barrage of glowing green magical projectiles. Alvin swiftly dodges the attack, and the green blasts explode violently into the snow all around them. Alvin continues to run away with Fredia. Frustrated, the ghoul leaps high into the sky above them, declaring that they will take their secrets to the grave. The monster charges a massive amount of green energy in its chest and unleashes an ultimate attack called Diffusion-type Death. A giant, terrifying green skull surrounded by green lightning forms in the air. Looking back over Alvin's shoulder, Fredia screams in absolute terror, recognizing the deadly spell as the Finger of Death. Alvin continues to run through the snow while carrying Fredia on his shoulder. Fredia blushes and yells at him to stop moving. She complains that he is holding her in a rude way. Behind them, the ghoul charges a huge ball of energy. Alvin looks back and counts the seconds in his head. He figures out that the monster's attack will reach its full power in exactly 4 seconds. Alvin tells the monster that it is too slow. He suddenly summons a crossbow in his free hand. While still running, he turns and shoots a single arrow. The arrow flies fast and hits the monster right in the center of its energy attack. The magic violently explodes in the ghoul's face, sending the monster crashing down into the snow. Alvin stops running and tells Fredia that they are safe. Fredia looks back in confusion and asks what just happened. The ghoul praises Alvin for the good hit and promises to remember him. In the large city of Elrond capital, Yvonnemoor, inside a palace hallway, a knight runs quickly across the checkered floor. The knight kneels beside the king lying in a grand bed. The knight reports that the royal sister is missing and begs to take the silver knights to go rescue her. The king immediately refuses the request. He orders the guards and the knight to stay in the city. He explains that the knight must stay to take over the demon king's throne. The knight looks up in shock, arguing that the sister was the one supposed to inherit the crown. The king says the kingdom cannot fall into chaos. He explains that his health is failing. He could collapse at any moment, and there is still no news of the sister. Because of this, they need a successor ready right away. The knight bows their head, quietly agrees to the order, and walks away, left alone. The sick king sighs heavily and looks at a large family painting on the wall. He wonders where his beloved daughter Fredia could possibly be. Back in the snowy fields, the necromancer and his defeated red monster use teleportation magic to escape. Alvin watches the empty space and complains that the villains ran away without even saying they would be back. Fredia stares at Alvin and demands to know who he really is. Alvin points to himself and simply claims that he is just a normal barbarian. Fredia crosses her arms and yells that he is a liar. She explains that real northern people hate the word barbarian and only call themselves Northmen. She also questions how a simple warrior could possibly know so much about rare and complex necromancy magic. Alvin holds up his hand nervously and tells Fredia he cannot give her the real reason for his knowledge. He tells her to just pretend a wise spirit whispered the secrets into his ear. Fredia smiles, crosses her arms, and says she dislikes liars, but she will forgive him this time. She grabs the edge of her long dress and bows deeply. She thanks him sincerely for saving her twice and promises that her royal family will definitely reward him for his help. Suddenly, a strong wind blows across the snowy field and lifts Fredia's dress up. Alvin stares with wide eyes and accidentally shouts the white. Fredia's face turns bright red as she quickly holds her dress down and yells at him not to look. Alvin sweats and points his finger past her. He quickly explains that he was not talking about her clothes. He points to a massive wave of snow crashing down the mountain right at them. He screams that the deadly white tide has arrived. Alvin immediately grabs her and throws her over his shoulder again. He yells out to run and sprints away from the giant avalanche as fast as possible. They race through the snow and manage to reach a small wooden hunter's cabin. Inside the dark cabin, a pot of food bubbles over a fire. Alvin and Fredia sit on the wooden floor around the fire. Alvin holds a bowl of food and asks how she planned to fight the 3 vampires if he had not stepped in to help her. Fredia smiles confidently and holds out her fist to show him a golden bracelet made of glowing flower-shaped gems. Alvin looks surprised and recognizes the item as a powerful gem scroll. He notes that using this magic item would have easily destroyed the vampires in an instant. Fredia agrees and points out that Alvin knows a lot of hidden information. She then asks him to explain why he thinks the necromancers are trying to assassinate her. Alvin tells Fredia they need to think carefully. He says they must figure out who benefits the most if she dies. Fredia looks down and guesses that her brother, Prince Otto, would be the one to benefit. Alvin remembers the night from the palace and calls Otto a cross-dressing prince. He then warns Fredia not to be tricked by how things look. He explains that even though her death would make the prince look like the winner, that is not the actual truth. Fredia drinks from her warm bowl and smiles in agreement. She says her brother Otto is a coward who would never have the guts to order an attack like this, even if he drank a whole bottle of strong Elrond vodka. Alvin explains the real political situation. He states that the current Demon King is very sick. If a weak heir like Otto takes the throne, the fighting between the kingdom's reformers and conservatives will only get worse. He reveals that the true winner of this chaos would be a hidden third-party group that controls the most resources in the kingdom. Fredia looks shocked as she realizes the necromancer faction is behind the attack. She quickly stands up and declares she must return to the capital, Ivanmore, immediately to stop them. Alvin calmly stirs the pot of food over the fire and warns her that stepping outside during the white tide will freeze her solid in 30 seconds. Fredia argues that she cannot just sit safely while enemies destroy her kingdom. Alvin smiles and explains that the worst part of the storm will only last for 3 days, and the villains will not make a move during this time. He points out that her simply being alive and knowing their secret is the biggest threat to the necromancer's plans. Fredia asks the ordinary barbarian for his advice, and Alvin tells her that her first step to winning is just making it back to the capital alive. Hearing this, Fredia looks surprised, but then becomes very serious. She holds out her hand with the glowing gem bracelet and formally asks Alvin to become her knight and form a contract with her to stop the conspiracy. Alvin immediately refuses the offer. He explains that he has his own tasks to complete and cannot stay in Elrond for a long time, knowing secretly that these royal contracts are a lifelong commitment until death. Fredia insists she must stop the villains, but notes she has no land or titles to give him right now. She blushes and nervously offers herself as payment if he becomes her Black Knight. Alvin spits out his drink in shock and quickly waves his hands in panic. He clarifies that he did not mean he wanted her and repeats that he truly has his own mission. Instead of a contract, he asks her to repay him by performing a secret Elrond magic rite for him in the future. He agrees to help her while silently wondering how a princess could be so bold compared to modern women. Fredia agrees to do the magic ritual for Alvin once her energy returns, as long as it is not a forbidden secret. She asks him what kind of ritual it is so she can get the right materials ready. Alvin walks toward her and raises his hand. Blue magic sparks around his fingers. He says it is hard to explain with just words, so he decides to show her instead. He activates his special talent called Reshaping the World. A bright blue light suddenly surrounds his body. Alvin thinks to himself that his borrowed body's memories and Titan powers are getting much stronger. He also remembers his own personal mission to find out the truth about a burned village. Outside, the snow continues to fall on the small wooden cabin. Inside, Alvin creates a giant glowing wall of text and symbols. Fredia looks up at the bright writing in complete shock. She reads it and realizes it is a secret blueprint for a ritual that can easily create many strong, Tier 3 warriors. Alvin smiles and asks if there is an issue. He explains that the required items will cost a lot of money, but they can buy most of them secretly on the black market. He notes that dragon blood is the only really rare item they will need to find. Fredia looks at him with worry. She asks if he truly plans to use this dangerous method to stop the coming war. Alvin smiles calmly and explains that power is not good or bad on its own. He says only the people using the power make it good or evil. He then reminds her that she is a smart scholar looking at the blueprint, not an evil demon king. Hearing his wise words, Fredia stares at him in silence. She places her hand on her chest and swears an oath on her royal bloodline. She promises never to share or use the blueprint without Alvin's permission. Alvin tells her she does not need to be so serious. He says the closest city is Flanders, and they will go there for materials after the snowstorm passes in 3 days. 3 days later, in a large busy city, a famous trading city ruled directly by the Demon King and free from noble control, a man yelling for people to make way. Alvin watches him from inside a horse carriage. He recognizes these workers as low-level demons from the game, but notes they feel much more real in person. He realizes once again that he is in the real world, and not just a dream. Fredia happily announces they have arrived. They step down from the carriage onto the cobblestone street. Fredia notices Alvin looking around carefully and asks what he is staring at. Alvin whispers for her to be careful because they are being watched. Fredia looks worried and asks if the enemies have already spotted them. Alvin grabs her hand to lead her away as they stand together in the middle of the crowded city square. Alvin tells Fredia that the situation is not that bad. They walk through the busy street and Alvin points out the people watching them. He explains that their disguises are too obvious, meaning they are just decoys meant to draw attention while the real professionals hide in the shadows. They walk past a street performer. Alvin honestly admits that his current strength is not enough to escort her safely back to the capital. He explains that they must visit the local black market to buy all the needed magic materials at once to get stronger. Fredia holds up a small brown pouch filled with a few gold coins. She looks worried and asks how they will get into the black market because she did not bring enough money. Alvin smiles calmly and tells her not to worry. He confidently states that someone else will pay for it. The two of them walk across the stone courtyard. As they approach a man sitting on a bench, Alvin asks the old man to explain the rules of the area and says he hopes the man can take good care of them. The old man on the bench asks who they are. He tells them to leave if they are just commoners looking for fun. Alvin does not say anything. He simply holds out his hand and shows the man a glowing gold ring with a large red ruby. The old man's eyes widened in shock. He quickly stands up and bows deeply with his hand over his heart. He apologizes for his rudeness, calls Alvin an honorable guest, and offers to lead the way. The old man guides Alvin and Fredia through a dark tunnel. A guard tells them to state their business. Alvin smiles as they exit the tunnel and look over a massive underground city built inside a cave and lit by yellow torches. They walk down a stone path to a building with a sign that reads Golden Light Tavern. The old man tells them they can rest inside, and then he leaves them alone. Inside the tavern, Alvin and Fredia sit at a round wooden table as a waitress stands nearby. Alvin explains to Fredia that this underground city is the richest black market in northern Elrond. He tells her they just need to wait there for someone. A man with a mustache approaches their table. He takes off his black hat and greets Alvin warmly. He mentions their last meeting in a place called Blackwater and asks if Alvin is finally ready to officially join his group, the Black Hand. Alvin smiles and tells the man they can talk about joining the group later. He explains that he is there to make a deal with the Black Hand Chamber of Commerce. Alvin reaches out and places a glowing pale skull object on the wooden table. The man asks Alvin if he made the item and calls him an alchemist. He quickly takes off his hat and bows to apologize for being rude earlier. He then asks Alvin and Fredia to follow him. The three of them walk up a long brick staircase and enter a private room. The man tells them they do not need to worry about being seen here. The room has a large wooden table completely covered in glass bottles, potions, and alchemy tools. The man explains that he prepared the room of a master alchemist named Borleo for them. He also mentions that it took him all night to gather the local bugs on the table. Fredia looks at Alvin in total shock. She asks him if he is actually a master scholar. Alvin smiles at her and tells her to go rest. He explains that the Black Hand group will gather the materials they need. A system screen appears showing his WorldForge core talent. He tells Fredia not to worry because he has his own plan. 1 hour later, the wooden door opens again. Alvin walks out holding a piece of paper with a list of items. He hands the paper to the monocle man. Alvin tells him to use the glowing skull as payment to collect everything on the list. The man takes the list with a huge smile. He thanks the esteemed alchemist and promises that his group will not let him down. Alvin tells Fredia it is time to leave, and they walk away. As they leave, the man smiles slyly and accepts their deal. Suddenly, a younger man walks up beside the monocle man and whispers in his ear. He warns his boss about a new order. He explains that the scary necromancers are looking for a man and a woman who just came from the icy fields. He points out that this matches Alvin and Fredia perfectly. The man orders the young man to go contact their big boss right away. He realizes that their two new guests are much more special and important than he originally thought. The young man agrees and goes to pass on the message. In a large room inside the Alchemist's Guild, Alvin tells Fredia that everything is prepared and it is time for her to perform the secret magic. Fredia suddenly draws a sharp sword. Alvin looks surprised and asks what she is doing. Fredia uses the sword to slice her own arm. She carefully collects her own blood into a small glass vial. She holds up the vial of royal blood and asks Alvin if it is enough for the ritual. Alvin accepts the vial and asks what he needs to do next. Fredia drops a book onto the wooden table with a loud thud. She holds her bleeding arm and explains that she needs some time to properly set up the magic array. She tells Alvin to take a break and rest while she gets everything ready. Alvin picks up the book and walks away. He jokingly asks Fredia if she is going to complain about the pain from cutting herself. Alvin sits down on a brown couch and begins to read the book. Suddenly, he looks up from the pages and sees Fredia holds the small glass vial of her royal blood. She uses bright blue magic to pour the blood into a tall container filled with green liquid. Alvin tells her that adding royal blood to a body-forging ritual is very extravagant. 3 hours later, a large green magic circle covers the dark floor. In the center of the circle sits a rectangular tub filled with the bright green liquid. Fredia wipes the sweat from her forehead. She tells Alvin that the ritual is finally ready, but she asks if he is truly sure about doing this. Alvin smiles with full confidence and says he completely trusts her magic skills. He walks toward the tub and begins to take off his shirt. While undressing, he reminds her to tell him about her own problems just like they promised. Alvin stands shirtless, showing off his strong muscles, and happily says it is time to begin. Fredia blushes bright red and quickly covers her mouth in embarrassment. She calls him a rogue for stripping so suddenly. Alvin pulls down his pants, leaving only his white underwear, and simply tells her to turn her head away. Next, Alvin stands still while Fredia stands close behind him. She uses a glowing orange tool to draw magic runes directly onto his bare back. The magic symbols glow brightly on his skin as she finishes the drawing. The large magic circle on the floor shines. Alvin walks forward and steps down into the tub of glowing green liquid. Fredia stands outside the circle and nervously admits that she is actually a little worried about the process. Alvin sits in the tub and smiles back at her. He tells her not to overthink things and to just continue the ritual. Finally, Alvin leans back and sinks into the bubbling green water, closing his eyes to absorb the powerful magic. He thinks to himself that the water feels very comfortable. Suddenly, the green magic water begins to swirl and bubble violently. Alvin's eyes snap open and glow with a bright green light. His mind is quickly pulled into space. He floats in the empty space and wonders what is happening. The screen shows an outline of his body. Alvin complains and realizes he has to put the body parts together himself. A large digital timer appears in the air, showing 299 seconds. Alvin understands he has to finish building the body before the time runs out. He reaches out and drags a glowing red heart into the center of the body outline. He works quickly and uses his fingers to drag the lungs, kidneys, and intestines into their correct spots. He looks at the finished body and feels relieved. The timer hits exactly 0 seconds just as he finishes. A system message flashes to confirm that the body reconstruction is perfectly complete. Alvin feels glad that he did everything correctly. Back in the real world, the liquid slowly absorbs into Alvin's skin. Fredia watches him from outside the glowing magic circle. She looks amazed and admits she did not expect the ritual's absorption rate to be this high. She smiles and thinks that this barbarian is a really great deal. Alvin continues to sleep peacefully in the tub as the magic enters his body. Suddenly, a knock echoes from the heavy wooden door. Fredia turns around and looks at the door. Outside, the monocle boss speaks to them. He apologizes for interrupting them in the middle of their ritual. Inside the room, Fredia looks at the door with a serious face. She casts a spell called Wood Magic Rebirth. Thick green vines quickly grow out of thin air and completely cover the door to lock it shut. Then, Fredia touches a glowing blue gem on her chest. She commands the gem to scan the area and check the situation around them. A bright blue magic circle appears in the room. Suddenly, Fredia uses her power to summon several giant beasts. A massive blue water golem, a white wolf, and a large polar bear appear. The magic does not stop there. A huge golden circle opens in the air above Fredia. A female angel with large white wings slowly floats down from the golden light. This angel is named Gabrielle. Gabrielle lands gently next to Fredia and respectfully calls her master. Fredia orders all of them to protect Alvin from the enemies outside, so he can safely finish his magic bath. Outside the room, the monocle boss orders his men to break in. One of his thugs kicks the wooden door, but a bright yellow magic barrier suddenly blasts him backward. The boss yells in shock at the strong defensive magic. He quickly orders the rest of his men to force their way inside. His thugs use large axes and clubs to smash through the door and the glass windows. Inside the room, Fredia orders the angel to handle the attackers personally to make sure no one escapes. Gabrielle smiles and agrees to the command. Suddenly, the door is completely smashed open. The monocle boss and his large group of armed thugs rush into the room. The boss stops in his tracks and looks completely terrified. He stares in shock at the giant water golem, the polar bear, the wolf, and the glowing angel. He stammers and realizes that Fredia is using extremely high-level summoning magic. His men start yelling in panic as the monsters attack. The giant white polar bear leaps forward and bites one of the thugs. The bear uses powerful wind magic, making the thug scream in confusion about the strange spell. At the same time, the massive blue water golem easily punches another man, sending him flying across the room. Seeing his men getting destroyed, the monocle boss turns around in fear and yells for everyone to run away. The monocle boss stands in front of the glowing white wolf and pulls out a knife. He nervously tells the wolf to act like a good dog and go play outside. Instead, the fierce wolf roars loudly and lunges forward. It bites the boss hard, shocking him with bright magic energy. Watching this from across the room, the angel Gabrielle covers her face with her hands in embarrassment. She apologizes to Fredia for not teaching the wild animal better manners. Fredia tells Gabrielle not to worry about it and says they need to check on Alvin. The two women walk over to the large glowing magic circle on the floor. Gabrielle leans over the green water and looks at Alvin's peaceful face. She asks Fredia why she used her own noble royal blood to perform such a high-level ritual for a simple barbarian. She questions what kind of relationship the two of them really have. Fredia looks a bit flustered and quickly says it is not what she thinks. She looks down and explains that Alvin is actually a friend who means a great deal to her. Alvin continues to float quietly in the healing green water. Fredia stares at him with a gentle, worried look and silently begs him to wake up soon. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes from outside. Fredia turns her head in surprise and asks what is happening. The angel Gabrielle looks toward the door in shock. Gabrielle, the giant polar bear, and the blue water golem stand over the defeated attackers. Dark purple smoke rises from the bodies on the floor. One of the dying men cries out that it is a curse. Gabrielle quickly steps in front of Fredia and tells her to stay back. She warns that the dark magic aura is extremely corrosive and dangerous. A mysterious person wearing a long black cloak and a dark hood steps into the doorway. The hooded man casually says good evening to them. He looks at the giant monsters in the room and praises Fredia's skills. He says it is very impressive that she managed to cast such advanced summoning magic in just an instant. The man then pulls back his dark hood, revealing his face and short reddish-brown hair. He smiles confidently and states that this high level of power is exactly what he expects from the eldest princess of the Elrond royal family. The angel Gabrielle quickly steps in front of Fredia to protect her. Gabrielle warns Fredia to stay back because she feels a very strong and dangerous curse coming from him. The man raises his hand, and dark purple magic begins to swirl all around his body. He tells them that he needs to confess something before they fight. Suddenly, a terrifying dark purple skeleton monster with glowing red eyes appears from his shadows. Fredia looks at the man in complete shock. She recognizes him and calls him Augustus, the traitor and archbishop of the death god cult. Augustus smiles wickedly and confirms that she is right. He then asks Fredia if she knows the terrible price of betraying his cult. Dark magic completely surrounds him as his eyes look crazy. He tells her that he will show her the true meaning of his actions. Augustus holds up a dark purple orb covered in snake symbols and uses its power. A massive, violent explosion of red and black energy blasts out from his hand. With an insane look on his face, he yells that the price for betrayal is absolutely everything. In response, a bright yellow light flashes as Gabrielle summons a glowing holy sword. The angel yells out to protect the princess and charges straight toward the dark explosion. The giant polar bear and the white wolf roar loudly and rush forward with lightning flashing around them. The massive blue water golem also joins the charge, ready to fight the dark magic and defend Fredia. The giant blue water golem, the white wolf, and the polar bear charge directly into the dark purple explosion. A massive blast of pink and purple energy shakes the entire room. The angel Gabrielle quickly drops to one knee in front of Fredia. She slams her glowing holy sword into the floor to create a safe shield. Gabrielle smiles back at Fredia and tells her not to be scared because she will protect her. The smoke slowly clears to show the white wolf and the polar bear panting heavily on the ground. Fredia looks completely shocked. She cannot believe her high-level summoned monsters were pushed back so easily. She looks into the thick smoke and sees a massive shadow stepping forward. A giant dark knight appears wearing thick blue and black armor with glowing purple eyes. The knight holds two large silver swords crossed in front of its body. Fredia stares in fear and recognizes the terrifying monster as the Black Paladin of the underworld. She asks Augustus if he actually summoned the ruler of the undead. Augustus stands confidently next to the giant dark knight. He smiles wickedly and explains that his group is just a small branch of the cult. However, he tells Fredia that since she betrayed them, this powerful monster is her final punishment. Fredia calls out for Gabrielle. The angel Gabrielle flies forward and swings her glowing holy sword at the Dark Knight. The two swords hit each other and create bright sparks. The Dark Knight swings its giant sword down with purple magic. Gabrielle looks surprised and quickly makes a glowing circle shield to protect herself. She yells that she will not let the monster hurt Fredia. The Dark Knight hits the shield with a lot of power. The shield breaks, and Gabrielle is pushed backward. She falls to the floor in pain. Augustus stands behind his Dark Knight. He tells Fredia that a new angel cannot win against his monster. He says the royal princess will die here soon. Augustus looks at Fredia with red eyes and smiles. He tells her she has great resources but is not using them well. He then looks around the room and asks where the barbarian went. He laughs and guesses that Alvin left the princess behind and ran away to hide. Fredia looks extremely worried and scared. She clutches the golden gem bracelet tightly in her hands. She quietly begs Alvin to wake up quickly. She tells herself that if he does not wake up, she will be forced to use the dangerous magic of her gem scroll as a last resort. Across the room, Augustus laughs like a maniac. He mocks Fredia for showing so much love to a weak barbarian. He confidently claims that a low-level warrior could never fight his Black Paladin and assumes Alvin probably died just from looking at the scary monster. Suddenly, the stone wall behind Augustus begins to crack. A massive, muscular arm violently smashes right through the bricks with a loud crash. Augustus stops laughing and looks back in complete shock. He panics and asks who is breaking through the wall. Fredia's face lights up with hope as she happily calls out Alvin's name. Thick white steam clears to reveal Alvin standing there completely shirtless. His body is now perfectly forged and packed with huge muscles. He looks incredibly angry and ready to fight. Alvin glares at the enemies and aggressively asks them how an undead monster cries, showing he is fully prepared to destroy them. Alvin moves with incredible speed and pins Augustus down by grabbing his head. Augustus is completely terrified because he did not even see Alvin move. Across the room, the giant Dark Knight is about to swing its heavy sword down on Fredia and the angel. Augustus panics and screams for his monster to stop and stand down. The Dark Knight obeys instantly, stopping its huge silver blade just inches away from Fredia's shocked face. Alvin lifts the scared Augustus up by the collar of his black cloak. Looking very calm, Alvin asks the cult leader to explain what his group is all about. Augustus sweats, cries, and begs for his life. He calls Alvin a divine messenger and promises to tell him everything if Alvin will just spare him. Suddenly, the giant Dark Knight drops its swords to the floor. The massive monster shakes and falls to its knees right behind Fredia. Alvin looks confused and asks why the monster is falling over since he did not even attack it. Augustus yells back in fear, calling Alvin a monster. He explains that the Black Paladin is bowing down because it is absolutely terrified of Alvin's overwhelming aura. The giant Dark Knight presses its head flat against the ground in total submission. Alvin thinks for a moment about the cult and the monster. He smiles and tells Augustus that he understands the situation now and does not need to hear any more of his talking. Without waiting, Alvin forcefully throws Augustus through the air. The cult leader crashes hard into the stone wall, while Alvin stands confidently, showing off his new strength. The giant Dark Knight suddenly roars and charges forward. It swings its massive twin swords down to attack Alvin with powerful purple magic. Fredia screams in panic and warns Alvin to watch out. However, Alvin stands his ground and raises his bare arms. He easily catches the giant blades with his bare hands, creating bright sparks. Alvin smiles confidently and notes that he has not moved his body in a while. Bright blue energy flashes around his arms as he shows off his incredible new strength. With a loud shout, Alvin lifts the entire giant monster into the air by its swords. He violently slams the heavy Dark Knight into the ground, completely crushing it and shattering the stone floor. Dust and smoke fill the air as the monster is defeated. Alvin stands up calmly and dusts off his hands without a single scratch on him. Nearby, Augustus watches the scene in absolute terror. He trembles in fear and stammers, finally realizing that he has picked a fight with a real, terrifying titan. Alvin stands next to the crushed Dark Knight as purple smoke rises from its broken body. Augustus sits on the ground and wipes his mouth. He warns Alvin not to celebrate yet, claiming that his powerful mentor will arrive in the city in less than half an hour.